This is a Rough Tiger production.
And you, and you, and you, and you were there. Some of it wasn't very nice, but most of it was beautiful. And we're back.
Yes, we are, finally.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting us take a week off to attend to some personal matters. This is Dream Idiots. My name is Morris. My partner across the Zoom meeting there is Bryan. And each week we bring each other stories and bring you along for the ride. Bryan, where can the fine folks find our stuff?
You can find our stuff everywhere. You're listening to us right now on some podcast platform. We're on every single platform out there. So please like, share, and subscribe if you don't mind. You can go check us out. We actually are on Patreon now, patreon.com/dreamidiots. You don't have to pay. You can sign up for free if you just want to get the audio there. But if you'd like to tithe to the Church of Saint Idiot, you can pay us a tiny bit of money, and you can actually see these stupid podcasts in video if you want. It's like I can set up for $5, $10, or $15. But you can also check out dreamidiots.com, and then we are on Instagram and Facebook at Dream Idiots, or drop us a line at dreamidiotspodcast@gmail.com with thoughts, suggestions, story ideas, etc. And we have some new news, exciting news, Morris.
That's right. If you're in the San Antonio area and you listen to good old terrestrial radio, you'll be able to check out Dream Idiots on KXEP 101.5 very soon. That's Empower House. They've decided to take a few of our stories here, and they're going to cobble it together into a 1 hour program starting very soon. At least by February, but maybe sooner than that. We're not sure of the date and the time yet, but we'll let you know as soon as we know. Very excited to have that. And that's a good way to point someone to the show who maybe doesn't use podcasts or understand what podcasts are. And the other thing is that they're going to clean them up for us, because we all know that Bryan is a potty
we
mouth.
do occasionally have a yes. Yep, sorry, folks.
These will be suitable for tender ears, because it does have to adhere to the standards of traditional broadcast language. So that is KXEP 101.5 Empower House in San Antonio. We'll let you know the date and the time. And it's been a while since either one of us has been on the airwaves in San Antonio, so that should be exciting.
Actually, I mean, and there's a small chance there could be someone out there that would hear our names and go, "Wait a minute, I know those guys.
They're back. I didn't know they were allowed back in the city again.
I thought they were deported somewhere."
Yes, but we're very excited to be partnering with Empower House to bring the story to a wider listening audience there in San Antonio. So be on the listen for that.
Yes, well, hopefully we'll have a time slot here soon. But yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah. So we take turns going first. Bryan, this is episode 103, which means it's odd. You're odd, so you get to go first with episode 103. What do you have for us this week?
All right. So thanks again for the week off. That was Morris was being generous there. It was mostly my fault. Life intervened, but we're back. So this week I'm calling this story, Dishonesty is the second best policy. And when I wrote that down, I realized that's the title of a book that I have written by a UK comedian named David Mitchell. I'm not trying to steal his book title idea. I just realized that it was the same thing. So we're going to talk about dishonesty. So many moons ago, I did a story on the psychology of secrets, and we have talked about the Dunning-Kruger effect a lot, kind of in passing on this podcast over the last 2 years. And I came across, this is just sort of preface or context to the story that's coming, but I came across this definition of what lying is that I liked the best, especially when you're talking about the context of sort of social psychology. And so, according to this definition, lying is the capacity for dishonest behavior to have greater utility than honest behavior. So I sort of like that a whole bunch. So your wife asks you, do I look fat in this? Of course, you say, no, honey, you look great in that, even if she does look, right? Because the utility of being dishonest is, exceeds the disutility. And then what I didn't fully realize, the Dunning-Kruger effect is not at all about intelligence or perceived intelligence. Dunning-Kruger, those that suffer from the Dunning-Kruger effect, have self-deception about their abilities, not their intelligence. So they overestimate their ability to achieve task X, and you also suffer from Dunning-Kruger effect if you are an overachiever in a certain field or practice and you de-emphasize the impact that you have when in fact you should be doing the reverse. So and, someone who suffers from Dunning-Kruger would be the person who, not that this I don't think has ever happened in the history of aviation, but if someone comes on the air and can someone land the plane, someone with profound Dunning-Kruger is the person who's going to raise their hands and say, yes, of course I could do it. I've played Sega Genesis when I was a kid. I can do this too. So anyway, so that's just a little bit of a preface, which hopefully will make sense here shortly. So we're going to talk today about a guy named Dan Ariely. So Dan is an author, New York Times bestseller. He has written a number of books, one entitled Predictably Irrational and one called The Honest Truth About Dishonesty. But unfortunately for Dan, he's at a bit of the center of a controversy because he is accused of fraudulently massaging data in a study that he was working on that was then subsequently used by governments and insurance companies and other businesses. And he used this data to help them find policies to help them promote honesty. So just wrap your brain around that for a second. But so the guy is on. Has done several TED Talks. Kind of has a smarmy vibe about him. He's the James Duke Professor of Psychology and Behavioral Economics at Duke University. So he's a bit of a rock star in academia. So Ariely, in 2012, puts out a paper with 4 other researchers in a lovely, incredibly dry publication called Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So this paper is titled Signing at the Beginning Makes Ethics Salient and Decreases Dishonest Self-Reports in Comparison to Signing at the End. That's way too long. They should have found another way to title that. But as you can probably tell there, the basic premise that they're putting forth is that when you are asking a large group of people to respond truthfully to a set of questions, asking them to attest to their fidelity and their honesty, etc., if you do that at the beginning of the form, it leads to more candor and more honesty in the completion of the form, as opposed to if you wait until the end. That makes perfect sense. Of course, that's true, right?
Sure.
So the team here presented 3 studies which they claimed found support for the conclusion. Not surprising. The first 2 were experimental studies in laboratory settings. In both, all the participants in the study were asked to solve math problems, and then they had to report their performance on a form, knowing that they would be paid more the better they said they did. In the version where they had to sign the honesty pledge first before reporting how they did, 37% of participants cheated. But when the honesty pledge was at the bottom of the form, 79% cheated in the first study and 63% cheated in the second.
Good God.
Which seems staggering, but it's all, life is all about how you, not life in general, I guess, but how you incentivize people to behave definitely has a huge impact on things. So it's the third study, however, that winds up being the source of consternation because there appears to be fraud. In this study, this same team of researchers had been contracted by an insurance company in the southeastern United States. Allegedly, it's the Hartford. Allegedly, but they were willing to give half a group of their customers a sign at the top honesty form for reporting their current mileage on a car, and the other half the traditional sign at the bottom form. So the difference in this as well was off by nearly 2,500 miles a year. If if you sign at the top versus signing at the bottom, a 10% difference. The average driver goes about 12,000 miles a year. And so again, if you're asked to sign early, you're more likely to be candid. And so this is, kind of getting into a dry area of actuarial tables and how insurance companies work to figure out premiums and that kind of nonsense. But finding tactics and methods to encourage people, motivate people, incentivize people to tell the truth is a field of study, and definitely an area where people spend money to figure out how to maximize it, right? So for years, going back to 2012, the findings on these studies, weren't questioned at all. They're kind of used as a template for a number of companies who start to use the data. But then a series of doubts start to emerge because other groups start to try to replicate the findings in these studies, and they can't replicate them, at all. The authors of the original paper even tried to replicate their findings again, but even they couldn't do it. 2020 rolls around, they publish a paper in the same journal reporting their failure at being able to replicate their findings. So, about that same time, some oddities were noticed in study 3 from the 2012 paper. So, there's a blog post that goes online August 17th, and this blog post by 3 different writers named I won't even try these names: Uri Simonson, Leif Nelson, and Joe Simmons. They looked at this data and just found massive irregularities, and they couldn't explain them, justify them. They weren't subtle problems; they were blatant ones. And they quickly realized that the data that drove the third study was basically impossible. The numbers just didn't make any sense at all. Each author of the 2012 paper quickly agreed with the findings of this blog post and said that the data in this experiment was complete garbage. They didn't understand where it came from, and they actually then asked that the proceedings publication retract their original study. So I'm going on and on about this thing, and it's so dry, but I found it weird and sort of funny because it all comes back to this guy Ariely, who's this rock star in this field. 3 of the 5 authors claim that they are only responsible for the first 2 lab studies. They didn't have anything to do with the third study. One of the authors, the 4th author, corresponded with these blog authors, and actually fired off some of the original data from Ariely in a spreadsheet. And it's clear by looking at who originated this data that either the insurance company created the data, or Ariely created this data. And so the whole thing is based on a fraud, essentially. But nevertheless, to this day, Ariely, in spite of his prominence, is adamant that he did nothing wrong. And if he were to commit fraud, he would have done it. He says he would have done it in a more subtle way, which doesn't really give you a lot of confidence. He says, quote, "I'm not an idiot. This is a very easy fraud to catch," unquote. So social media also, took this up a little bit as well. And online, people were raising questions about why an insurance company would why on earth would an insurance company manufacture false data? It doesn't make any sense. Why would you fabricate data that helps a researcher's hypothesis, and then presumably pay them a lot of money only to have them do it this badly? And then this criticism has also caused some of his other work to face some scrutiny. So, the whole guilt and innocence here doesn't really matter, but the whole thing is just sort of richly ironic, because the whole point of the study was to investigate dishonesty, So we end up getting dishonesty in the study of dishonesty, which is like even more meta, because now Ariely is being dishonest in his cover up of his dishonesty in the study of dishonesty. Like what? This, again, makes no damn
What
sense.
what if the fifth scientist just rolled with it and you caught us, which is what we meant for
which,
you to
which is
do.
which is what we
So the system
originally
works.
wanted. Right. So the main source of this is a there's a whole bunch on Dan Ariely out there. Most of this came from an article in Forbes, and the author here kind of goes off on this tangent about how it's how this study has damaged the public trust and reliability for the public doesn't have any trust in scientific research, I don't think, or minimally so. And how this is undermined, and this is just a travesty in so many ways. So I don't really think it's that necessarily, but this does seem to be a pretty severe case of kind of Dunning-Kruger, but it certainly is just Russian nesting dolls of lying your ass off, but for no benefit or no perceived good that I can see. It's just so bizarre to me that you're in a data driven, being asked to be serve as a consultant in such a data driven industry, and you would apparently just make a whole bunch of crap up.
Especially when one of the goals of quantitative research is to create a set of conditions that can be replicable
Right.
by anyone
Right.
and produce verifiable results.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you have a richer academic background than I do, but those sort of beg the question for anything out there. I mean, if you're one of those people that thinks the COVID vaccine doesn't work, or okay, so everyone from now on, this would never ever happen, of course, but if you're doing research or any sort of study into anything, everyone is now required to provide access to all their data. You can't just issue forth a PDF that says here are our conclusions based on 6 months of study. Here's the data. So don't believe me? Here it is. So I guess I don't know, but funny to me, this guy would apparently go to such lengths to create this lie and then now lie about it. Allegedly. Don't sue us.
Especially when they were pretty much caught right out of the box, right? I mean,
Oh no, it was kind of industry standard there for
10 years.
8 years, many years. And seemed to be true. And then it took 6 or 7 years before anyone realized, wait, these numbers don't add up.
Someone looked at the numbers and said, someone didn't carry the one. What happened with these numbers?
Well, it says here the 2 + 2 is 22. I'm pretty sure that's not right. And anyway, just a random little story from the corner of the internet I came across. Is like, wait, what?
And it's unfortunate when that happens, because that gives, like you said, that gives ammunition to the people who just don't believe in science and the scientific method and verifiable things like numbers.
Right.
Right. I mean, and even then, when it's percentages, people act like percentages are, well, you said I had 96% chance. Yeah, 96. That's not 100, right? I mean, it's
right.
you drew the shit into the stick with that 4%. So
That's
fascinating, Bryan. That's just, my goodness, what a dumb way to do things.
Yeah, way to screw it up there, dude. But anyway, whatever.
Allegedly.
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 It's time for the Dream Idiot's curse word of the week.
Well, do we have a curse word of the week that reflects this?
As always, yes, we do. So this is one curse word. The Germans are just good at this stuff. Along the same lines as Schadenfreude from way back. I think I did that very early on. The curse word this week, Gammelfleischparty. GAMMELFLEISCH party. Gammelfleischparty.
I don't even want to attempt to.
So there's a publishing company in Germany called Langenscheidt. And every year it announces the annual Youth Word of the Year. In 2008, the Youth Word of the Year was Gammelfleisch Party, or Rotting Meat Party, ROTTING, Rotting Meat Party,
Okay.
as a way to refer to a gathering of people over the age of 30.
Little bastards. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Germany. Yeah. Yeah.
Little
Don't you have someone to invade?
Oh, Bryan. Damn. That's what is it again? Gummenfleischen
Gammel, Gammel, Fleisch, like Fleischmann's.
flesh. Or flesh, right?
Right. Gammel
Gummenfleischen
must be rotting. Gammel Fleisch Party. Making fun
Nice.
of old folks. And I mean, I would love to be age 30 or 35
Oh,
or 40 or 45.
someone mentioned that the other night. We had a group of people over and said, yeah, I just, I mean, I'm feeling old. I'm 34. I was like, uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Can I cooking? Can you follow me out in the backyard so I can beat it to death?
Okay. Well, thank you, Bryan. Thank you for
Yeah.
your story. Thank you for the curse word of the week, making me feel like rotting flesh. Are you ready for my story?
I am.
All right, let's rock and roll. Um, Bryan,
Mm.
the Ideal Toy and Novelty Company was founded in the year 1903 in Brooklyn, New York, by
Mhm.
husband and wife team. Here comes that name again, Morris and Rose Michtom. So we got another Morris popping up.
Okay.
Rose came up with an early version of the teddy bear in 1902. And as we all know from history classes, that was a big seller in 1902. The toy associated with President Theodore Roosevelt was a huge seller across the country. They weren't the only company to make the teddy bear. There was a German company that made the teddy bear. Several companies made it, but it was a big seller. Teddy bears were big in the early part of the century. This couple founded Ideal and branched out from the teddy bear to make other kinds of dolls. Now, in an initially unrelated event, some 30 years after the founding of the Ideal Toy Company, way down in the tiny town of Isleta, Texas. You ever heard of Isleta, Texas?
My mom was born and raised in Isleta, Texas.
All right. A baby boy was born to Pedro and Beatriz Armas.
Okay.
On August 12th, 1933. They named him, you might say it Julian, but I'm just going to say Julian. The family was, quote, everyday normal. Pedro supported his wife and 5 children by working in a grocery store. Isleta, Texas was settled slightly earlier than the Ideal Toy and Novelty Company was founded in 1680 by Spanish conquistadores, Franciscan monks, and a tribe of Tigua Pueblo natives. Why are you laughing?
It was 300 years before, or 250 years beforehand.
Okay.
Right.
It is the oldest European settlement in Texas. You probably knew that with your mom being from there. Did you know that? That was the earliest,
No, I did
oldest
not know
European
that.
settlement in Texas, just across the Rio Grande from Ciudad Juarez, Mexico.
Mhm.
The city was annexed into El Paso in 1955. This part of Texas has a rough and tumble history. Pat Garrett, who would go on to assassinate Billy the Kid, lived there for a while. John Wesley Hardin was gunned down by Johnny Selman in 1895. We'll come back to Isleta in a moment. In the late 1930s, the Ideal Toy and Novelty Company name changed to simply the Ideal Toy Company, a moniker which carried the manufacturer through the post-World War II baby boom. The company was, for a time, the largest doll company in the United States. I'm just going to call it Ideal from here on out. Ideal through the decades would go on to create board games and dabble with licensed characters, such as Snoopy and Smokey the Bear. By the early 1970s, Ideal was one of the top 3 toy companies in the world. Amongst the products bearing the Ideal label over the years was such popular toys and games as Evel Knievel sets, Flintstones merchandise, Howdy Doody dolls, the Jaws game, the Magic 8 Ball, Mr. Machine, Rubik's Cube, the Betsy Wetsy doll, the Hands Down game, the Mousetrap game, Captain Action. That was a really cool action figure. and Judy Garland merchandise from The Wizard of Oz. So they'd
Wow.
seen a whole bunch of stuff throughout the years. Now, I had a few of these. I had an Evil Knievel set. Do you remember these? These were
Oh yeah,
awesome.
yeah. I always wanted one. I never had one.
I had the simple motorcycle with the Evil Knievel figure. You put on the motorcycle, you put it into the charging station, you
I,
crank that thing up, and you hit the handle, and that motorcycle with the action figure on it would just go down the street. The ads for it said it could jump a set of encyclopedias from A to W.
Mm.
Now, you have to explain today what an encyclopedia is, but uh, it could really go, and you could pose the Evil Knievel character, and he could be doing handstand. He could do all kinds of cool stuff. I have an associate from graduate school who claims that you could actually pull the crank apart and literally attach it to a drill and get it
Mm.
going really super fast and just shoot it off down the street. I don't know how true that is. I had friends who had the mousetrap game, which we would abandon the game because I never really liked it. We were interested in building the mousetrap and see if we could get it to work. I knew people who had the hands down game, which is the one where you slap the little hands like tiddlywinks and try to get the chips into the bowl. I did have a Jaws game. Do you remember that? Where you had the
No.
big plastic Jaws shark and rubber bands held the jaws in place, and there's a whole bunch of stuff in his mouth, like license plates and old tires and things. And you tried to, it's kind of like Operation. You tried to pick them out without setting the jaws off.
All right.
Invariably, I just used it to eat action figures. It just became another prop for action figures. And of course, there was the Magic 8 Ball, which I stopped believing in because obviously I was never a starting forward for the San Antonio Spurs. So screw the Magic 8 Ball. But I think we all had ideal toys at one time or another. They were very, ubiquitous there in American
Right.
culture.
Yeah, sure.
Now, down in Isleta, Julian Armas was growing as well. Described as an ambitious kid, by the age of 11, he earned money at 3 different jobs. He delivered the morning newspaper at 4:30 a.m. When that was over, he bottle fed 60 calves for a local farmer. Then he went to school. After school, he repeated the process, this time delivering the evening edition newspapers and bottle feeding the same 60 calves. He would head home for schoolwork and supper, and then report for his evening job at the local movie house as a ticket taker and usher. He was a very busy young man. On a quote, warm May evening in 1949, Julian was 12 years old. Now, this kind of creates a 5-year discrepancy with his birth date, according to Wikipedia,
Mm-hmm.
the birth date that I gave earlier. So I'm really not sure what's going on here. But for the intents of this story, he's 12 in 1949. I'm not sure
Okay.
what the accurate thing is.
Right, sure. Yeah,
Um,
it's fine.
He was hanging around with an 18-year-old friend named Dickie Caples. Earlier, Dickie had broken into a storehouse for the Texas and Pacific Railway. He showed his young friend the booty, a box of railway torpedoes. Now, I wasn't sure what these were. I had to look it up. They're explosive devices, and they're used as a means to alert train conductors to slow down in certain conditions, such as foggy weather or construction zones. The torpedoes are strapped to the metal rails and pressure activated. When a train runs over them, they explode, and the loud noise alerts the conductor to slow down. They don't damage the train, they don't damage the rails, but they make a huge bang that's very, very loud in order to be heard over the noise of the locomotive engine.
Right.
Right. So the boys opened the box with an ice pick, and Julian pulled out one of the torpedoes. He tore the seal off. I see you wincing in advance of this. He tore the seal off, and the device immediately exploded in his hands. In Julian's own words, Dickie being older, quote, probably saved my life, because Dickie had a driver's license and, more importantly, his own car. This is a quote. The effect was exactly the same as if I detonated a stick of dynamite. And the next thing I remember is being face down in a tree about 20 feet away. I was trying to get a hold of the tree trunk to get to my feet. I couldn't get a grip on the tree, and it puzzled me. It simply didn't occur to me that I didn't have any hands. Dickie
Oh my
rushed
God.
his friend to the hospital, where the doctor performed emergency surgery. Julian's hands were horribly mangled, and the doctor had to perform amputations 2 inches above both wrists. Julian lost an amazing amount of blood, but he lived. He now had to adjust to his new condition. Julian took off only 4 weeks from school to recover from his injuries. And when he did return, he was accompanied by a service dog named Butch. Julian strikes me as an incredibly tough, resilient kid. And if you think otherwise, there's something wrong with you. Eventually, he adapted to using steel hook prosthetics. These are the kind that go up, wire in through the elbows. There's a wire into the bicep that allows you to open and close the pincher.
Right,
That's
pinchers,
right.
Yeah.
He played sports and learned how to shoot a gun. This is mid-century Texas, after all. He continued his job delivering papers and performed as the bugler for Scout Troop 95.
He played the bugle?
He played the bugle. You don't press the taps on
trumpet.
a bugle.
Okay, okay.
Not a trumpet, yep.
Hmm.
He graduated high school at 15 and enrolled in correspondence courses from New York University in psychology and criminology. He spent time in California, some point in the early 50s, as an actor, and he claimed dozens of appearances in film and television. But his sole confirmed work came in a 1973 episode of Hawaii Five-0. At some point in the 1970s, he started going by the name Jay, J-A-Y, middle initial J, Arms, A-R-M-E-S, and he earned a private investigator license. He was a very successful private eye and kept in excellent physical condition. His biceps control the prosthetics, so he maintained a rigorous upper body and arm workout routine. As his reputation grew, so did his fortune. He owned a large estate with all of the up-to-date security measures of the era, including an electronic gate, a high-voltage electric perimeter fence, and a closed-circuit video system. We're talking about the late 60s, early 70s.
Right.
He drove a Corvette Stingray, which he liked for its, quote, speed and maneuverability. The car was decked out with communication equipment, a rear-mounted closed-circuit camera, and in the best spy tradition, a revolving license plate, just like out of a James Bond movie. When not using the Corvette, he was chauffeured from case to case in a limousine, which served as a mobile office. When called for, Arms owned a twin-rotored helicopter that could hold up to 12 passengers. Arms' technological gadgets extended to a special modification hidden in his right arm prosthetic. A lethal 22 Magnum gun mechanism was built into the housing. This was probably like a 1 or 2 shot Derringer.
Right.
Now, at this point in the story, Bryan, I bet you're wondering, this is all very interesting, Morris, but what is Marlon Brando up to? Were you wondering that?
I
What is
was.
Marlon Brando up to?
You read my
Okay.
mind.
That's a good question. In 1972, a controversial film premiered at the New York Film Festival. It had been filmed in Paris under the direction of Bernardo Bertolucci. Young actor Maria Schneider starred in her first major role opposite the notoriously difficult Marlon Brando. The film received an X rating and was titled The Last Tango in Paris. Now known for its controversial rape scene and the traumatic effect it had on 19-year-old Maria Schneider, there was something else that happened during the filming. Marlon Brando's son, Christian, had stayed behind in California while his father traveled to France for the filming of The Last Tango in Paris. Christian was Brando's eldest child, and the only one he shared with his first wife, Anna Kashfi. Kashfi and Brando had fought viciously over Christian's custody after the divorce, with Brando eventually winning. After school one day, and I think he was 13 or 14 when this happened, let's call him 13, 13-year-old Christian was kidnapped, allegedly at the behest of his mother for the sum of $10,000. Brando sought the help of a group of private detectives, simply known as the Investigators. Some sources say the lead detective had appeared in one of Brando's films. This could not be confirmed. The lead detective was, of course, J.J. Arms. He crossed into Mexico from California and rescued Christian in short order, who was held prisoner just across the border. Arms found him after days of searching and held the kidnappers at bay until help could arrive. Christian was in horrible shape, having contracted pneumonia at some point. Rather than keeping Christian in Mexico to testify, Arms figured it would be better to get the teen back to the U.S. for immediate medical treatment. After discussing this with the federales, the investigators choppered young Brando to a San Diego hospital. After a brief stay, Marlon and Christian were reunited. Arms would end up taking cases for other celebrity clients, such as Elvis Presley, Liz Taylor, Yoko Ono, and even the reclusive Howard Hughes. Arms became a celebrity himself in the 1970s, appearing in People magazine, on various talk shows, and he had the aforementioned guest role in Hawaii Five-0. Now, this to me is extremely interesting. The episode was called Hookman. Okay.
A little
And
too on the nose.
in it, he plays a criminal who lost his hands in an explosion. He was a safecracker, I believe. And he
Well, I was going to
vows
say that he does seem like a Bond villain, but go
he
ahead.
he vows revenge on the policeman who he feels caused the accident. So he goes after them as a sniper. And this includes Jack Lord's character. And apparently this was remade for the newest Hawaii Five-0.
Oh,
And I
wow,
looked it up
okay.
on epguides.com. It's all of the, I didn't realize this, but for the new Hawaii Five-0, all of the titles are actually in Hawaiian, except for this one episode. So if you go to epguides.com, it's all these beautiful, all these beautiful Hawaiian words, and then Hookman right in the middle. In 1976, he published his autobiography, J.J. Arms Investigator, by J.J. Arms as told to Frederick Nolan. Now, Bryan, let's close this circle. Could you please open up the email I sent you and describe the two images attached?
Oh, wow. Okay. So first image is an action figure in the box. Wow, it's a JJ Arms action figure. Jeez. So it says JJ Arms across the top with biokinetic hands. Oh, that's pretty cool.
And the second picture is just the figure out of the box.
The figure out of the box, as the briefcase with all the various accessories he can swap out for his, you can do the hooks, you can do.
Arms also inked a deal with the Ideal Toy Company. That's how the J.J. Arms action figure and mobile crime lab vehicle hit store shelves in 1976. The plastic figure, as you said, stands about 9 inches tall and has a real cloth outfit, slacks, a black turtleneck, and brown leather vest. The figure's hands pop off at the wrists. What all can you see there, lying there? He's got some cool accessories.
So, the hooks that he uses, they're, I guess, they're just, his standard.
The standard metal
Suction,
prosthetics. Yep.
Yeah, suction cups.
Yep.
I can't tell. There are three,
Okay.
at least three others there. I can't tell from the
There
picture
are.
what they are.
There's a pair of flesh hands for undercover work is what the box says.
Right.
There's a hook with a spinning gun attachment, so the gun will just spin out of his
Okay.
spin to the front. There's a prosthetic hook with a machete attachment.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally there's the blue one is a small magnetic prosthetic for picking up metal objects.
Okay.
And then the pair of suction cups completes the figure's kit, allowing it to be stuck to flat surfaces, as though the detective were scaling a wall. The mobile crime unit, I didn't supply you a picture of that, but it's a large van decked out with all kinds of tricks for dealing with the criminals. There's a large scoop on the front, a bulletproof shield that can be lowered down, and a large hook for snaring cars or stolen loot. There's also a picture of a hideout playset prototype that has like a robotic punching bag he can use and a target range, but I'm not sure that was actually ever produced. As of this writing, J.J. Arms is still alive and somewhere around 91 years of age, perhaps. He is presumably enjoying a well-deserved retirement somewhere in the El Paso area. And that is the story of Julian Armas, aka J.J. Arms.
Yeah, very cool.
Have you ever heard of him? I figured you might have with your mom being from El Paso.
Never heard of him. I'd be tempted to ask, my mom or members of my family, because they were all born and raised in Isleta. My mom was born in 35, so she's 3 years younger than he is.
Information for this was taken from J.J. Arms Investigator from 1976, as told to Frederick Nolan from Avon Books, New York. IMDb for information on The Last Tango in Paris, and all I could find for J.J. Arms is that episode of Hawaii Five-0 Hookman. Wikipedia for info on Arms, Christian Brando, and what railway torpedoes were. And finally, big shout out to plaidstallions.com. I wasted tons of hours on this website. it was for info on the toy line. It's filled with great photos and essays on 70s toys and 70s pop culture, including some great photos of the JJ Arms action figure, the JJ Arms mobile crime lab, and the unproduced. They've got a prototype of it, but the unproduced play set as well.
Sweet.
So there you
Yeah,
go.
that's cool.
JJ Arms investigator.
Yeah, super cool. Thanks.
Texans we don't know about.
Yeah, very obscure, but super cool.
Yeah, and he really was all over the place in the 70s when you look at the kind of places he appeared. And again, the technology that he uses is kind of like that story I did on Dallas Egbert early on. The technology that was state of the art back in early 70 is now stuff that's basically on our cell phones today. Just the
right.
But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So interesting dude.
Nice. Yeah, cool. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, another one in the books. Thanks for listening, folks.
Yep.
Please check us out online. If you're in San Antonio, 101.5 FM here soon. We don't know what time, but we will find out. DreamIdiots.com, Facebook, Instagram at Dream Idiots. Please like, share, and subscribe. If you get a chance, shoot us a review and give us 5 stars. That helps us a whole bunch in terms of algorithms and metrics or something. I don't know what it does, but supposedly it helps.
And Bryan should have a pretty big update for you on the next episode.
Explosive.
We'll see what happens with that. And other than that, thanks for listening, and keep being good to each other.
This is a Rough Tiger production.
Bong bong.
Mm-hmm.
Bryan.
Bong bong?
Bong bong.
Bong bong. Good.